Hello everyone and welcome to our 7th virtual wine tasting. I can't believe we've gotten to 7 of these. It's been a great ride. It's really fun. It's one of the bright spots that COVID has brought us is to be able to do these virtual wine tastings and bring our wine tasting experience into your home. So we're really glad that you joined us today for our, what we'll call this, the Holiday Favorites Bundle. And we're also really happy to be supporting the Marlboro Public Schools music program. It's a great program. We're happy to do it, and we're happy that they've chosen us to partner with. I know, being a product of the Marlboro Public Schools myself, the music program was always very prominent, and I've known a lot of people throughout my years here in Marlboro who have been involved in, including a dear old friend of mine, George Wapham, who was the late George Wapham, who was a fellow Rotarian with me here in Marlboro, and it was a real prominent figure in this town, and we're happy to be working with the public school music program. If you don't know who I am, my name is Aaron Icanian. I am the general manager here at the Vin Bin. We have, if you don't know who the Vin Bin is, if you haven't been to our stores before, we have 4 locations here in central Massachusetts. Right now I'm sitting here after hours in our Marlboro Main Street location, where we have our full service beer, wine, and liquor selection, and we also have our award-winning cafe, which we serve our homemade sandwiches, soups, salads, scratch-made items that are really delicious. We also have a second location on the other side of Marlboro in the Hannaford's Plaza. That is a strictly beer and wine store. We have a location in Hopkinton, which is where you'll find me most of the time, and that's also just strictly beer and a craft beer and wine shop. And then in Southborough, we have a situation that is a store that is very much like this one here in Marlboro, which is they get the full liquor, craft beer, and boutique wine, but also the award-winning cafe. So if you're ever in the area, if you haven't been to our stores, please come see us. Check us out online at www.thevinbin.com. We have a brand new website we just launched where you can actually shop our entire wine inventory and spirits through the online site. So you can literally just sit at home and shop like you're on Amazon, only you can buy great alcohol. So we're really excited about that, and that's going to continue to grow as we progress over the next year. So what is a virtual wine tasting, and how is this going to work? So what I'm going to do here, and again, if you've not been to our stores, we are not a stodgy, uptight wine snob shop. Okay, that's not how we operate. We are a really friendly, really laid back kind of store. So when we do these virtual wine tastings, I want to bring that same experience to you. So we're going to go through 3 different wines here tonight, and a couple of different cheeses and a chocolate. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on each product, just kind of telling you about the product a little bit, the way I see it and the way I taste it. Obviously, you have a good amount of things here in your bag, so there's no pressure here to drink or eat all of this in one sitting. I mean, that you can do it if you want to do it. I'm impressed, but it's going to be tough. So you don't have to do that with me. You can come back to this video. A lot of people like to play this in the background while they're hanging out with their significant other or a small socially distanced group of friends, or even over Zoom with their friends who are also participating in the tasting in their home. So this is very casual. Please don't feel any pressure, and just go along with me. So let's first go through what you have in your bag. So you have 3 different wines. You have the 2015 Hecula Monastrell. You have the 2018 Corchetto Toscana. And then you have the 2018 Adam Cabernet. For food items, you have a box of crackers. You have the Manchego cheese, which is the one with the sort of ridges on the outside. You have the Piave, the Italian cheese. It's got that bluish label on it, a little firmer, flakier cheese. And then you have a disc of Taza chocolate, dark chocolate. Looks something like that, okay? So this is designed to be a whole meal together, not necessarily have one thing pair with the other. I'm going to talk about maybe some pairings here, but I really encourage people to have fun and kind of do it on their own pace and on their own, whatever they kind of feel like. Let's briefly talk about how to taste wine and how to taste cheese. So when we taste wine, what you'll see me do is I have my glass here. You'll see me sniff the wine first before I do anything. I pour it in, I sniff it, and then you'll see me swirl it really aggressively. I like to really swirl it. and then I sniff it again. And what that's doing, what that swirling does, is it opens up the wine. It adds air to the wine. It kind of brings the aromas out, which is the first thing you notice when you drink wine, is how it smells. And when you smell it, don't be shy and don't be afraid. You really want to put your nose like as far in the glass as possible. If you're up here smelling it, you're just going to get, ambient smells. You really need to get into the glass. The other thing you want to do is look at the wine in the glass, see the color, just evaluate it. None of these are things, aromas are definitely indicators of good wines, but like some wines don't have great aroma and they taste great. Some wines have unbelievable aroma and they don't taste that great. So these are not things that necessarily tell you if the wine is good or bad. They're things that you're just evaluating the wine. You're just seeing what the experience is like. And then when you sip the wine, you want to make sure that you kind of roll it around your palate. You want it to hit every part of your tongue, every part of your mouth. You really want to just understand how it feels. Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it soft? Is it harsh? Is it biting? Is it drying your mouth out with tannin, or is it really silky smooth? Is it acidic? Is it making you kind of pucker up? Is it acidic in a bad way, where it makes you kind of, it doesn't feel good, or is it acidic in a good way that kind of makes you want to have another sip? So these are all things we think about when we're tasting wine. But at the end of the day, the number one most important thing when tasting wine is if you like it or not. That's the number one. So when you take a sip, you say, I like this, it wins. You're safe. Okay? So always think of that. If you like it, it's a good wine. That's what one of our favorite sayings here at the Vin Bin is that if you enjoyed it, it's good. So I think we should get started. We're going to start off with the Hecula. Okay, this one here, the Monastrell. So this is from Spain. This is from the Yecla region, which is sort of in the southeast corner of Spain. This is probably a grape. Monastrell is the name of the grape. It's probably a grape many of you have not heard of. One thing I would recommend just before we start drinking this wine, so there's a name on the back of this wine. It says, and I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but it says an Eric Solomon selection. So Eric Solomon is a importer, and there's a few guys that if you're ever in a wine store that isn't the Vin Bin and no one's around to help you, if you go to their Spanish section and you see his name on the back of a bottle, you can buy the bottle. You can be rest assured that wine's going to taste good. He is an all-star importer. So when we see Eric Solomon wines come in the store, our eyes perk up and our ears perk up, and we listen because we want to try those wines. So Monastrell is a very prominent grape in Spain. You'll see quite a bit of it. It's kind of this wine that one of my kind of pet sayings is that this wine tastes the way the color purple might taste. And if you can think about the color purple and you think of these like sort of grapey and purple dark fruits, blackberry, dark cherry, jamminess to it, and even on the nose, right off the bat on the nose, it almost has this like cooked down grapey jam nose to it, right? So when we swirl it, we really want to move it around the glass, get it going. Yeah, so I get a really more intense, spicy jam on it, and almost like a blackberry meat, almost an black olive meatiness on the nose. It's really a nice wine, good depth to it. And in the glass, you can see it's really got some nice weight. It's not super thin; it's almost viscous. So this is not just a wimpy wine. It has some power behind it. Let's give it a taste. Now, I'm spitting because I'm technically at work. You guys are not at work. You guys are having fun. You don't have to do that. A lot of people ask us at wine tastings, they ask us, well, why are people spitting the wine out? Well, there's times that when we're seeing wine with our sales reps, we might taste upwards of 50 wines in a day, in a 6 to 8 hour period. If we didn't spit the wine, we wouldn't make it through the day, okay? Even spitting the wine, some alcohol gets into your system through your mouth. Sometimes even tasting that many wines, you certainly know you did it, right? So, but on the palate, this Hecula is really, it's one of the great instances of a wine that is a little bit different on the palate than it is in the nose. It was very grapey and fruit forward in the nose, but on the palate it has a really nice spiciness to it, a nice kick. There's some really good grip to it, nice tannin. It's a structured wine. It's not soft and pillowy. I would classify this as a medium-bodied wine. There is plenty of fruit. You get plenty of that dark fruit on the palate, but there's a nice spiciness and almost a graphite-y, pencil shaving kind of note to it. Minerality. You get that slate, that really nice stone notes. What I would do with this wine, this is a really great barbecue wine. It's a great cookout wine. If you get one of these warm days in December or January when you're gonna want to fire the grill up again, I'd put this with anything off the grill. Steak, burgers, even grilled chicken would be nice because it's not overly strong. Yep, just a really great little bottle of wine we've been working with here for a long time. It's always shows well, so I quite like that wine, and I hope you did too. So after that wine, we're going to try one of our cheeses. So it's fitting sort of that was a Spanish red wine, so now we're going to kind of go on to a Spanish cheese, which is the Manchego. That's the one with the ridges on the outside we showed earlier. Manchego is an absolute classic of a cheese counter and a cheese board. If you ever go into a cheese shop that doesn't have Manchego, you need to leave the cheese shop immediately because they don't know what they're doing. It's one of the more famous cheeses in the world. I like to describe it to people as the way the Italians eat Parmigiano Reggiano is the way the Spanish use Manchego. It's on the table at all times. They grate it, they melt it, they snack on it. It's just a ubiquitous part of their diet. Manchego is 100% sheep's milk. It's from the La Mancha region in Spain. This is a younger Manchego. This one's aged about a year, so this is a nice, softer, creamier style. You can find some really aged Manchegos that are much more dry and crumbly, merely more texturally like Parmigiano Reggiano. But this one is, I think, a little more suitable for what we're doing, which is just snacking. Now, let's talk about tasting cheese. So tasting cheese is a lot like tasting wine. We evaluate it a little bit before we even try it, right? So we want to look at the cheese. You want to kind of study it a little bit. This one is kind of cool because if you break it apart, it really comes off in chunks. It's really got this nice texture to it. You can see that it's soft and spongy. If you smell it, it almost helps kind of warm it in your hands a little bit. You smell it, it has this unmistakably sort of gamey aroma to it, this sheepy barnyard note, which is kind of fun. But on the palate, and let's take a little bite. Really tasty. This one has a nuttiness to it. It's got a really nice salty bite. Almost has a caramelly, kind of toasted caramel note. It's very hearty. It's not super light. You can see why it's used in a lot of cooking because, like Parmesan, it will add a lot of nice salty, nutty flavor to what you're doing. Me personally, when I'm serving Manchego, I like it with something sweet. I like it with a fig jam or honey drizzled on top is really nice. And we used to have an employee of ours who would put it on nachos, and that was really delicious too. Really nice. So classic cheese there. Manchego, always a winner. And you can get it at our store any day of the week, almost 365 days a year. We will always have Manchego. Love that. So, second wine is the Quercetto Toscana. So let's give a little pour of that into our glass. Now, Quercetto, very, very classic Italian producer. We've actually had the winemaker from Quercetto come to the store before. A few years back, he did a wine seminar for us, back when we could do those. Someday we'll do them again. Really, really interesting guy. It was a really fun experience. So this is a winery that's basically been on a plot that's been making wine since like the beginning of time. I mean, it's almost amazing how many generations they go back. They can trace back winemaking in this place. So this is also a winery that makes wine from the entry level, $9, $10 a bottle, all the way up to hundreds of dollars a bottle. So they really cover a lot of ground. So this is their Toscana, which is a word you might see a lot on red wines, and it's obviously wine from Tuscany. And when you see this, just a Toscana label, you can pretty much know that this is going to be a Sangiovese wine, usually with a couple other grapes in it, and it's meant to be a table red. So this one here happens to be Sangiovese and Cabernet. Now, Sangiovese, if you think you know that Sangiovese, when you know that grape, you think of Chianti. If you ever drink Chianti, if you like Chianti, Chianti is not the grape. Chianti is where it's from. The grape is the Sangiovese grape. Um, so this is almost something I might sell as a baby Chianti, as something a more approachable style sometimes. So the Toscana is on the nose. Yeah, so I get a little more dark cherry nose, which is pretty classic with the Sangiovese grape. I get some barnyard nose to it, some funky nose. If Rick was here, Rick Lombardi, owner of the Vinbin, he might call it poopy, which is a word he likes to use a lot, which is kind of funny. But really, if you think about when you go into a barnyard or you go to a horse stables and you sort of smell that, and it's got that really nice funk to it. And it's sort of in wines like this is actually something we look for in wines, is the barnyard nose. And when we swirl it and get aggressive on it, yeah, you get a little bit more tart fruit on this, almost like a cranberry pomegranate kind of nose, which I think when we drink this wine will speak to the acidity of it, which is kind of classic with these Italian reds. Yep. So, let's see, I'm doing it, but right on the side of my mouth here, there's a lot of acid in this wine, and it really grips your palate, grips your tongue. But it's not bad acid like I talked about in the beginning of this when we talked about tasting wine. That's a good acid. So when you are having rich food, okay, a really rich bolognese, a really rich lasagna, these classic Italian dishes, you need acidity to wake up things and to kind of cleanse your palate. And that's what Italian wine does. And there's a lot of times when people are trying to buy Italian wine from us, and I try to warn people a little bit that the Italians and the French and the Europeans in general, they really, really make their wine to go with food. So this is, they really, when they're thinking of producing wine, they're not thinking of it in a lot of the times the way we think of it in America when we're going to get home from work. We're going to just pour ourselves a big glass of wine and watch TV. They're thinking of, how is this going to go with my dinner? How's this going to go with my lunch? How am I going to pair this with my cheese board? So you'll find these wines have a lot of acidity. They have an edge to them that American wines don't necessarily have, and we're going to try one that's like the complete opposite of these kind of wines when we get to the last wine. So, sometimes these Italian wines, this one's not so much. This has got some nice, a little more fruit to it. It's a little softer. But sometimes these Italian wines really don't show that well in a tasting because they're not accompanied by something to eat, not accompanied by a dinner, and they're just on their own. Especially as you get to these super high-end Italian wines, Brunellos and Barolos, in tasting, sometimes they're downright just not. They don't. When we do tastings with them, they don't ever sell that well because they don't show well to the average person because they're not jumping out with a lot of sweet fruit and jammy notes. But this one, you do get plenty of dark cherry, plenty of lively fruit on it. What I would call this wine, and when I sell this kind of wine to people, I call it a pizza wine, pizza night wine, or a Tuesday night wine, because this is like perfect with pizza. So if you Tuesday night, don't feel like cooking, gonna grab a pizza, a local spot, go to get a pizza, you get a bottle of this and you're golden. It's just enough weight to pair with some meaty toppings. It's just got enough acidity to cut through the cheese and the tomato sauce, and it's not very expensive, and it's really drinkable. Pizza wine all the time. I have a lot of pizza wines in my back pocket, so I can help you guys out with if you come see me in the store. It's one of my favorite things to sell because I love pizza. So now we'll do our second cheese. So since we just did, of course, an Italian wine, we're going to do an Italian cheese. So we're going to do the Piave. So the Piave is this harder one in your bag, a little more firm and hearty. So Piave is, as a Vinbin employee, it's sort of the cheese that one of the maybe 3 or 4 cheeses that you learn when you come to the Vinbin. One of the ways we train employees here on the cheese counter, because it's very, very intimidating, is to, in your first couple of days in the store, you want to pick like 2 or 3 cheeses that you're gonna talk about, and every day you pick 2 or 3, and then by the end of a couple of weeks, you've kind of gone through the whole cheese counter, and then you can sort of work with all of them. So for me, I remember that one of my first days working, one of the first cheeses I ever worked with was Piave, and I've loved it since then. It's always been one of my favorite cheeses, and it's always one that I come back to time and time again and just forget how much I like it. Piave is this Piave that's aged about. This one is a younger side Piave, maybe about 9 months to a year of aging. You can again find them into the 3 years of aging where they get really intense and really dried out. This is a cheese that is 100% cow's milk, that is kind of like maybe a baby brother to the Parmigiano Reggiano. It carries a lot of the same flavors of Parmesan, with that saltiness, nutty, and almost a tropical fruit note to it. One of the ways we identify really good Parmesan, Piave, these harder Italian cheeses, is they almost have a tropical fruit note smell to it, which is kind of interesting to think about, like a pineapple-y juiciness. And this definitely has that. As part of the aging process, and we'll see if the camera can pick this up, but you can see this on your own cheese. It's got these little white spots in it. So when you see those little white spots, some people think it's mold, and will get scared. But this is actually the proteins in the cheese. They crystallize as it ages and adds that crunchy texture, which is a really sought after thing in cheese. So with the Piave, we can try a little bit of it, but like I said, little tropical nose, very nutty. I love Piave. So little crystallized texture, really hearty, full-bodied cheese. Very long finish, a little sharp, a little spicy. This is one of the cheeses that pairs the best with red wine that we sell. Red wine and cheese is actually a really difficult thing to pair because cheese is so fatty, and a lot of red wines have trouble cutting through the fat of the cheese. So a lot of times we do white wine with cheese, but this one is a little drier and it's a little more aged, so it's got a little less of that coating fat on your mouth. So with the red wine, actually pairs really nicely. You can use this just about the same way you'd use Parmesan. You can grate it on pasta. I've added this to pizza before, calzones, that kind of thing. But really it's one of the absolute classic cheeses, just to grab a slice from the cheese counter, take it home, chunk it up, this and a glass of wine, and it's a great snack, great, easy dinner. And it's a great cheese. I love it. So the last wine we're gonna do is the Adam Cabernet. Okay, so we found this wine, I would say, just a little bit before the pandemic started, and since then it has actually been our #1 selling wine. It is a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the absolute pinnacle of red wine on the wine market today. It's the most popular red we sell, varietal that we sell. This is a really well-priced one in that medium, mid-teens range on the shelf, which everyone's looking for, and it pleases. It's pleasing to drink. It hits a home run every time. So way different than the first two wines we had. This is far fruitier, much more juice, much more black currant, ripe raspberry, almost strawberry berry notes. Really jumps out of the glass. And then you get a ton of vanilla, a ton of toastiness. So this definitely sees new oak aging, which you can get from all that just bursting vanilla bean kind of nose to it. So, totally reinforcing the palate. Vanilla come like right off the bat. Almost creamy texture to it. So this is when I talked about Italian wines not necessarily showing well in a tasting. It's because of this kind of wine. So if you can even go back to it because you have the wines open, but try the Italian wine right off the bat and then try this wine, and just that opening sip of this wine is so much more expressive with sweetness, and it's got that really sweet fruit and that sweet vanilla and that creaminess, and it really jumps out at you with flavor. So you can see why a wine like this would be pleasing. And I would actually call this wine, this is classic American wine. This is something you definitely would go home, crack this bottle open, pour yourself a glass while you're making dinner or while you're watching TV, and totally enjoy it because it's totally drinkable. Now, let's talk about what we're going to pair with this wine. So let's look at that Taza chocolate. Now, Taza is a really cool chocolatier out of Somerville, okay, local chocolate maker. Their specialty is Mexican stone ground chocolate. What does that mean? Well, what this means is that when you eat this chocolate, this is not going to be like Hershey's. It's not It's not. It doesn't turn to liquid in your mouth right away. It's not creamy. It has a grittiness to it, right? Crunchy texture, really interesting. This is a really dark chocolate, so a lot of bitterness, a lot of astringency, a lot of depth of flavor. Really nice. Now, we didn't specifically do pairings, but I think this one with this wine is the pairing to go for. You take a little bit of that chocolate, and a little bit of the wine. Perfect. The chocolate is sweet and bitter, and it's really balanced. It's really full-bodied, and the wine has just enough of that vanilla and sweet dark fruit to really complement it, to complement that chocolate, which also has its own inherent fruitiness to it. And it's a really cool pairing. Now, if you really want to have some fun here, okay, take a little bit of this chocolate and a little bit of the Piave and eat it together. Okay, that's a really fun thing to do with chocolate. A lot of people don't do that. You can try that together. You can try all this stuff together, and I hope you guys will. I hope you will continue to try these wines. Try to come up with your own pairings with the cheeses and the chocolate. Try to use maybe some of the cheese in a recipe. Use the manchego and scrambled eggs in the morning, or anything you want to do. I hope people have freedom and have fun with this, because that's what we try to do here at the Vineyard. We try to give you something fun and not make you feel like you have to do things a certain way. So that's the show for today. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us, everybody for allowing us into their home to give them something to look at besides the news and what's going on in the world. And we hope that this gave you, a little bit of respite from everything else going on. And we hope that you have a great holiday season, and we hope you stay safe and healthy and be well. Thank you for joining us.